Collective, and it's a real pleasure to welcome you all here today to our webinar, which is going to be looking at lessons learned from COVID and exploring how to turn crisis into opportunity for last mile distributors. So you will notice that you're all currently on mute. Please stay as such to help reduce feedback and background noise. As I mentioned, if you're tech savvy, please also take a moment to change how your name is appearing in the participants list, because we would love to know who's on the call with us today. Okay, so let's kick off by looking at today's agenda. Next slide, please. So I'll just spend a couple of minutes providing a bit of context, and we'll then hear fairly briefly from our speakers from Dharma Life, Danone Kiteiras, Nazava water filters, and Whitten Roy Partnership before breaking out into smaller discussions. Speakers, just a reminder to please leave your video on while you're speaking if you're happy to do so we can see your faces. So we only have an hour today and we can't cover everything in great depth. However, we hope that today really provides GDC members with an opportunity to hear from, learn from, and very importantly, ask questions of some of the largest last mile distributors in the game. That this ultimately helps you to consider how you might be able to translate their lessons and your lessons from COVID into your longer term strategy and activities. So we're not going to have a typical Q&A session in plenary today as we have done before, but you will have lots of opportunity to ask your questions in the breakout groups, which you signed up for previously. So don't worry about missing out on these on the other groups either, because we will be recording all four and sharing these with you afterwards. Next slide, please. Okay, so now the housekeeping is taken care of. Why are we here today? Well, over the past few months, we've heard a huge amount about the impacts of the pandemic on companies' day-to-day operations, customer relations, dwindling cash runways, and so on. And back in March, we actually held a workshop with our members. And this was, to find out how the pandemic was affecting them. And while many of our members have been able to pivot their operations successfully in the couple of months since, frankly, the situation remains bleak. So we actually surveyed our members as well in May and June of this year and found that 71% reported experiencing reduced sales and 14% said that they had ceased operating altogether. While we would like to think that things have obviously improved in the couple of months since then, in fact, recent data paints an even bleaker picture. So in an NDEV survey of 207 distributors, specifically in the energy access sector, the results of which are actually being published later today, 43% reported being in hibernation mode, and a staggering 3/4 said they would be unable to survive for more than 2 months without funding support. So while those stats sink in, next slide, please. So while the situation clearly remains current and incredibly urgent, today we really want to move beyond an interrogation of how the pandemic is affecting last mile distributors to instead consider what lessons can be learned and how these can inform your operations moving forwards. Because the fact is that there will always be new challenges to grapple with, and we want to work with and support you to strengthen your organization so that you can ride out future waves of uncertainty and, importantly, to find opportunities. Next slide, please. So as I'm sure lots of you on the call are aware, our members have certain characteristics in common. They all sell life-changing products that contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals. They target last mile or underserved households, and while they may provide other services as well, they primarily focus on distribution. Yet distributors are not homogeneous, and as we explored in our State of the Sector report last year, even within our membership, we see distinctly different categories of last mile distributors with varying approaches and different trajectories. But we hope that no matter your size, turnover, geography, or model of distribution, that each and every member on today's call will be able to take away and implement at least one lesson, and that this will help you to strengthen your business now and into the future. And for those of you who are representing other types of organisations on the call today, we hope that this will provide you with a window into a spectrum of last mile distributors' experiences and their determination to not only roll with the punches, but actually to use the current situation to open doors that were previously only slightly ajar. So over the next kind of 50 minutes or so, we'll be hearing top tips from our experts on how to, among other things, proactively capitalise on customer referrals, strengthen team communications, diversify your sales channels, and how to truly integrate digital into your ways of working. Next slide, please. So with that, I think that's enough from me. So let's turn to our lineup for today. I'd first like to welcome Gaurav Mehta. Gaurav is CEO of Dharma Life, which is a poverty alleviation organisation committed to fostering positive behaviour change and access to socially impactful products in remote areas of India. So Dharma Life consists of a network of over 16,000 part-time rural entrepreneurs in more than 50,000 villages across India. Okay, over to you, Gaurav.
Thanks, Charlotte. So it's a pleasure to be here. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll start by giving a bit of background on Dharma Life, and also the lessons learned for us from this pandemic. So Dharma Life, as Charlotte mentioned, is a social enterprise working on creating rural women entrepreneurs at the village level. The model consists of 4 components. So we basically create the entrepreneurs at the village level. We get them to sell social impact products and services at the village level. I have a last mile supply chain for that, or distribution chain for that. We run behavior change and communication campaigns, as well as doing market research and collecting insights for increasing the impact, as well as developing new products and solutions at the last mile. We've reached more than 13.5 million beneficiaries over the last 8 years of existence. And we are a hybrid structure between a non-profit and for-profit. In terms of COVID, obviously it hit us extremely hard. I mean, we had issues around, like most of you would have had, around having to shut down the sales channel, moving our whole channel towards essential goods delivery, as well as the difficulty with repurposing and reorganizing our teams to be able to operate in this environment, and obviously revenue uncertainty and other things. So the lessons learned, I'll focus on 3 lessons. First of all, I mean, we were lucky in a way that we had diversified our revenue channels. So we didn't really derive all our revenue from product sales. And so, lesson number 1 for us is, and it may be an obvious one, but still repeating it, that diversified revenue and funding structures are essential to survive asymmetric shocks. I mean, in absence of capital reserves, which, a social enterprise like us obviously struggle to build up. I mean, should be building up over time, but it's still not that easy. So you need to have these diversifications in place to be able to survive such a shock. And we were lucky to have that. We had an integration of kind of behavior change, communication, so service revenue, research service revenue, as well as distribution revenue. And that integration, obviously, while the distribution revenue went down to 0, we were able to kind of survive based on the other revenue streams. And they became actually even more important in this crisis. So that was actually the first lesson for us. And we still had to pivot a lot of things. And that brings me to my second lesson, that, I mean, technology forward or first approach was crucial in this pandemic. So we had to literally kind of change all the things we did to a digital approach. And so whether it's sales, it's behavior change, or it's research, all that is happening on Microsoft Teams or other platforms, WhatsApp. And we have been able to kind of build a strong tech backend and front end to be able to survive here. And I think, funny enough, our whole, I mean, we shut down our office, we are operating digitally. I think it's probably one of the most extreme approaches, that we are not even seeing the offices open even over the next few months. We are seeing this continuing and having a sustained change on the way we work. And there will be obviously some face-to-face, but it's kind of digital first. And that's happening across the organization, even at the last mile entrepreneur level. And it's been actually amazing to see how our entrepreneurs have taken this up. I mean, happy to share any kind of challenges we have had. I mean, there's been many, obviously, but it's been exciting from a journey perspective. The third lesson is agility and adaptability of teams kind of are essential for resilience to be there for such a crisis. So, I mean, we had to really change and widen our approach. I think what we did in this crisis is we pivoted our whole model towards a crisis response model. So our entrepreneurs became the crisis response force, who worked on understanding the situation, helping communicate the messages for COVID, delivering essential goods and services, as well as now helping post the immediate COVID phase, the community out of the crisis by kind of enabling them with tools and other opportunities to generate income. And this is the agility which we have. I mean, we had in our case, we had to build, and we had to it was not easy to build that through the team. But I think, I'm sure that's one thing which has been our one of the essential pieces for us to succeed and stay afloat in this situation. So these are the three lessons I wanted to share, and I look forward to a further discussion. Charlotte, over to you.
Brilliant, thank you, Gaurav. Yeah, really interesting to hear those insights. Thanks so much for being succinct as well. You mentioned you've got some challenges to dig into. I'm sure that people will be keen to hear more about them in the breakout groups. So for now, I'd like to move on to Mateus Garuti from Danone Kiteiras. Kiteiras aims to empower women through entrepreneurship, sales, and nutrition education within a direct-to-consumer urban sales network in low-income communities in Brazil. Kiteiras currently employs more than 4,000 door-to-door sales agents in 5 states in Brazil. Next slide, please, Emma, and over to you, Mateus.
Well, hello, everyone. I'm Mateus from Danone Sustainability team in Brazil. I hope you guys are all good and safe where you are. So I'm going to start by giving you a quick overview on Kiteiras before we move to our findings, I'd say. So, as just said, Kiteiras aims to contribute to women empowerment and self-esteem through entrepreneurship, sales, nutrition, education within a direct-to-consumer sales network in low-income communities mainly. Our value chain is composed by distributors, godmothers, the Kiteiras, who are the door-to-door entrepreneurs who sells Danone yogurt kits in their communities. And we currently have operations in 5 states of Brazil with at around 4,500 beneficiaries yearly. So that's the big picture. Can we move to the next slide, please? What I'd like to share with you today in 5 minutes, maybe 4 now, it's mainly about communication and its implicit messages as success factor on social distancing times. So we have experienced, and we are experiencing actually, a situation which our entire generation have never faced before. We had tons of breaking news. We had a wide variety of information related to the virus and its impact. So the question was, what and whom should we trust? It was clear to us as an organization, as a company, that we had to guarantee reliable information in a truly accessible language, as well as to truly understand exactly what our beneficiaries' main needs were as a whole, and to work around it. With that in mind, we started to share information on safety procedures, on government's emergency financial assists, and even on realistic but optimistic messages. Why not? But we were there at all times. We were there, and we believe that this connection, this presence, have not only provided important information related to the virus and its impact and what's going on, but we believe that have also transmitted another very important message, which is a sense of community and a sense of care through the entire value chain. So I'm sharing here with you some of these communication pieces to show you how simple and how powerful this can be at the same time. So by partnering together with our distributors, we started to share on WhatsApp, on Facebook groups with the Kiteiras, adapted World Health Organization recommendations, then a step-by-step on how they could apply to have the government financial assist and to help them with it, and so on. So it really became almost personal. And what we noticed then was that we were gradually constructing a bridge. So this online communication channel, it started to be strengthened, and it has enhanced this social belonging sensation with the community. So we've decided to use it more actively to engage and to support people on subjects that they could connect to that at-home reality with our products and that they could use with their customers as well. So can you give a click, please? And that would be product portfolio info and possibilities, like recipes, inspirational stories from Kiteiras, other beneficiaries across the country, free relevant sales training available, and of course, paying so much attention to what was relevant to them in order to continue to post things that were from their interest. So next slide, please. During this time, we had 300 people joining in our Kiteiras Facebook group, and a representative increasing proactive interactions between them. We firmly believe that this has contributed for them not to feel alone facing these challenging times, to feel supported, and mainly to feel oriented, to gradually feel comfortable and secure to get back on track on sales performance. So far, we did not create a new technology or tools, which of course we are looking at as business next steps. But it was clear to us, I'd say, that the power of empathy and the importance to stay almost personally connected to the field, mainly during this social distancing times. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Mateus. It's really refreshing to hear you talk about putting empathy really front and center of your business kind of strategy. And that's, yeah, a really nice note to end on there. I'd now like to welcome our third speaker. So we've got Lisa Hedrick, founder and CEO of GDC member Nazava Water Filters. Lots of you may know Lisa already. So Nazava manufactures and distributes water filters to last mile households in rural and peri-urban areas in Indonesia and also Ethiopia. To date, Nazava has reached almost 450,000 people in these two countries and shipped water filters to 32 other countries, including Nepal, the Philippines, and Mozambique. Over to you, Lisa.
Yes, hello everyone. Welcome to this webinar, and thanks a lot to the GDC for hosting me and organizing this webinar. It's very nice to see so many participants in the room and colleagues that are going through this this Corona crisis. And yeah, so hereby I would like to share some of our insights and some of our takeaways actually of things that we have started doing when Corona happened, and which we will continue doing after the crisis. The first thing was actually that we before Corona hit, actually our whole business model was actually focusing on selling water filters through the microfinance institutes. But because Indonesia went into lockdown, the channel that stopped completely. But we also had some smaller revenue channels or sales channels, namely the online sales and also the reseller sales. So when this MFI channel fell away completely, we took our marketing staff that normally was in the field supporting these microfinance institutes, and we started training them in doing more online sales. So we were tapping more into e-commerce and doing online sales. Yeah, so we are more now paying more attention on being on all the Amazon sites in Indonesia, and yeah, focusing more on online. And this was something that was yeah, didn't have a lot of attention before the crisis, and I think that after the crisis, it's good that we have this established, and it will be a long-lasting channel, as more and more sales in Indonesia are taking place online. So that is our first takeaway after Corona. And then the second one, next slide please, is that because of the crisis, it suddenly became much more acceptable for us to do long distance sales training. In Indonesia, it's normally very common that when you have a meeting that you visit each other, but Indonesia has 17,000 islands and is super big. It's also sometimes called the logistical nightmare. And it was already a long time a dream of me to just develop an online curricula where we could train our agents and our resellers online. And that became suddenly possible through Corona, because it became socially much more acceptable to organize Zoom meetings and online trainings. And that was also very effective because of the curricula that we developed. We would have a longer period that we would be engaging with our new resellers, and we would give them exercises, and then they could show how they would apply their sales pitch like a week after. So it also allowed for more practice for our new agents to apply the skills that we were teaching them. And the platform that we used that really depended on our clients and our resellers. So that could either be Zoom or Google Hangouts or Skype. That's just what the client prefers. And I really hope that we can further continue this after Corona. And although I really enjoy traveling, I think it also has benefits to meet online and have like a longer period where you can engage with new clients. So that was our second takeaway. And the third, next slide please, is that we also started, because our marketing team couldn't go into the field, we gave them a training on how to get back in touch with our existing customer base. And we trained them in calling, making phone calls to our existing customer base with the main purpose to get referral sales. But that had mixed success. So for instance, when we ask, like, do you think your life is easier with a Nazava water filter? Then 100% said yes. Do you think Nazava water filter helps to protect your health or your family? Then also 100% said yes. And then when we asked, do you think a friend or family would be helped if they would own a filter? Then 63% said yes, and 20% said maybe. And then we offered a discount, so they could get 10% discount on one filter, or if they purchased 4 products, they would get 1 product for free. But then actually only 12% of the respondents was enthusiastic about that. So I think we have to reevaluate how we ask these questions, and also see like which segments of our customer base we actually invest in making a phone call. Probably it's not effective to call like really old clients, but more effective to tap into like the most recent clients, because they still have the happiness of purchasing the product. So these are our 3 takeaways of the Corona crisis. Please reach out to me at lisa@nazava.com if you have further questions. And I really like what all your organizations are doing, and I'm really proud of all your work. So keep on going, and let's stay in touch. Over to you, Charlotte.
Brilliant, thanks Lisa. Really nice, that provides a nice segue, actually, thinking through customer referrals into our final presentation before we break out into smaller groups to discuss these topics further. So this is a slight change of pace now, as I'd like to invite Scott Roy, who's Managing Director and owner of Whitten Roy Partnership, to join. So WRP is a global consulting firm dedicated to maximising the impacts of organisations by transforming their approach to sales, management and leadership. WRP has delivered over 340 projects in over 40 countries over the past 11 years, 90% of which are in the developing world. Scott will be sharing some tools and insights on a very specific topic, as we just mentioned, which we know that lots of GDC members are currently thinking about. So how to capitalise on customer referrals. Over to you, Scott.
Thank you, Charlotte, and thank you to the GDC for inviting me today. I am really pleased to spend a little bit of time with you, a very little bit of time. You know, we help organizations solve sales problems, and I want to share with you a model that we use that is very simple, but it helps to understand why sales are the way they are. And that's the R, is the results, or the sales results come from three factors. One is attitude, the attitude of the individual who's doing the selling, and the managers and the leaders, et cetera. You know, if they're in a crisis mode, you know, that sort of attitude isn't something that's going to be nearly as productive as something where people see possibility, et cetera, even in crisis. Competence is the C, which is the skill of selling, or the skill of making a sales call, et cetera, and closing the sale. And the E is the execution, which is, are we doing the right things at the right time with the right people? So, you know, we basically, you see these as lenses where we're able to look at what is actually going on in an organization. So if we go to the next slide, this is what we've discovered as we've been working with our clients. And click one more time, if you would. We had a little error on that. There we go. So from attitude standpoint, COVID really stressed sales teams quite a bit. This is all going to sound really familiar. You know, the sense of anxiety, you know, about COVID itself, you know, the fear of, you know, is the company going to survive? You know, is my job going to survive? You know, people were highly distracted, and still are, quite frankly. You know, a lot of people got into a sense of impossibility and overwhelm. And when people are in those frames of mind or something like that, they don't perform really well. It's hard to become creative, and it's hard to actually bring your best forward. And under competence, all of a sudden you have sales teams, direct sales teams, that were thrown into a real tizzy because they had no prospects or few prospects. They're all of a sudden selling remotely or trying to sell remotely. You know, they feel the pressure to make sales, so they get, you know, more pressurized in the sales conversations with the ones they're able to hold. And so they try to convince people and pressure people. And then, and of course, lots of cost objections because other people have lost their jobs and are, you know, they're pulling back from spending money. So they've got all that to deal with. And then on top of that, you have managers who are dealing with remote management, which is new to most of them. And of course, under execution there's a loss of focus. There's a disruption of their normal routine. They lack the tools that are needed in a remote situation. Some of them lack connectivity, the ability to reach out to clients. And so therefore we've seen an awful lot of idleness. And so, you know, COVID has really shown real problems, or really presented real problems, not just for businesses that are such as yours, but businesses across the world. I mean, everywhere. So next slide, please. One particular area I want to talk about, though, is the importance of customer relations. You know, and I say, but what if, because I want to look at a couple of things. So what if we really were oriented toward creating more repeat buyers if we were set up that way? So if you'd click on that, please, and click twice if you would. Yeah, there we go. And so new customer conversion rates in normal times are 5 to 20% closing rate, but repeat customer conversion rates are 60 to 70%. So if anything, there's a lesson to be learned here, is that do you have a diversified product line that you're going to be able to, you know, either sell more product to, or a different product to, or a different service. But an interesting fact is the gap in generating repeat business is 60 to 80% of satisfied customers do not do more business with a company that initially satisfied them, mostly because they lacked connection with the company or the agent. You see, so this really goes back to what is your company's strategy to communicate with your customers. Next slide, please, or next click, please. Do it twice? Yeah. So referred, and let's talk about referral customers. When you have people referred from existing customers, the conversion rates are similar to repeat customers. It's a huge boost to your salespeople, 50 to 70%. But there's a 91% gap in generating referrals, because satisfied customers, 91% of satisfied customers say they would give referrals, but only 11% of the salespeople ask for them. Okay, so, and this is in normal times. So all of a sudden, people realize right now how important their customers are to them. And so they're executing these sort of quick outbound calls and this kind of thing. And a lot of times these will fall short because you haven't been maintaining a consistent communication pattern with your clients. So let's take a look at some lessons we can learn from this. So next slide, please. And double click on each one if you would, okay? So first of all, before COVID, people oftentimes treat a sale as a transaction, and they are looking for the next transaction as quickly as possible. And what we're seeing is that even in pre-COVID times, we think that you should be treating your sales as a new relationship, okay? And realize that you may only have one product to sell to them now, but in the future you may have multiple products and services, and you can design that. It's a very, very important skill or a very important strategy to put in place. Secondly, if you click again twice, the communications, with customers oftentimes are really inconsistent. You're so busy going out buying or getting new customers, you're not even taking care of the current customers you have. I really loved the comm strategy that you were talking about, Matthias, of reaching out and really, taking care of your client base. I think that's really excellent. And Lisa, even with not having the kind of conversion rates, at least that's the beginning of a comm strategy with your clients, which I think is very important. The next, click twice again, please. The one mistake I see most organizations make is they tend to try to incentivize their customers to give referrals to them. You don't need to do that, okay? Instead, you want to train your agents about how to get referrals and for them to expect referrals. Now, I have a lot of experience with this. A lot of people don't know this, but I've been in direct sales for about 40 years, either owning a company that does direct sales, door-to-door type sales, or being a consultant that consults with door-to-door companies. And so one of the key strategies we had in our company, which is an insurance company, was to get referrals. And, quite frankly, even during the pandemic, that company has thrived because the salespeople had referrals and they could call their clients or existing clients, and they have a really strong repeat business strategy. But it's at the core of the strategy, and so they're continuing to do well. Click twice again. And another key thing we see is that oftentimes organizations allow salespeople just to roam and to sell wherever they want to sell. And instead, you want to teach your salespeople to penetrate the sales territories and shrink the sales territories so you get more networking within a territory. That's going to strengthen repeat business and referral business. And the last two clicks, please, is definitely this is exposed that oftentimes many companies have just really undervalued the importance of referrals and the repeat business. And so therefore, what you want to do is to include this in your strategy and to educate your teams about referrals and repeat business and train them accurately how to do that. So that's what I have for you today. Thanks. Back to you, Charlotte.
Great, thanks, Scott. Yeah, really interesting. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions for you in the breakout group, digging a bit deeper into that. I am very conscious of time, and I'm sure that everyone wants to get stuck into the discussion part of the webinar. So thanks again to all of you speakers for providing some great food for thought for today. So let's move swiftly on to the. So we hope that you are all ready and raring to go, that you're ready to share your experiences and of course ask lots of questions. That's what we're here for. So in theory, at least, everyone should be muted on entering the breakout rooms. So moderators and speakers will need to remember to unmute yourselves. Moderators need to remember to press record. And I think that's it. So Izzy, if you could go ahead and open the breakout rooms, please, and we'll come back together in a few minutes time.
All right, so the people who are still in the plenary and did not receive an invitation to go to a breakout group, that is because you are stuck with me and with Lisa from Nazava. So hello everyone who is still in the room. So we do have a couple of questions for Lisa based on the questions that came through in the registration, but very keen for this to be as interactive as possible. So I will kickstart with a question, but I'm hoping that you guys will then drop some questions into chat for Lisa. So please do go ahead and pop your questions in now. So to get things started, Lisa, it would be great if you could tell us about whether you'd learned any lessons about managing relationships with investors and with donors based on interactions that you've had with funders over the last 6 months. I think we all know that raising finance has been particularly difficult at this point in time. So any lessons or insights would be really helpful.
Yeah. So what we did when the Corona crisis hit was that we first we panicked, of course, a little bit, and then we developed like 3 scenarios on what the future would look like, based on how much revenue we expected to get. And once we had developed these 3 scenarios, we shared them with our shareholders. And when we had the shareholder meeting, we also asked them how they wanted to be informed. And as the context could change over day, and like suddenly there were new local regulations or new national regulations, or staff was falling ill, our shareholders requested that instead of having quarterly meetings, that we share with them monthly updates. So we put that in our calendar, and now every month we just write a short blurb to our shareholders just to inform them how things are going. So yeah, because of the changing context, and yeah, we intensified our communication with our shareholders. Luckily, we were also able to raise some extra funding through the Kiva platform. So that actually was very good for yeah, we're very lucky that that was possible. But yeah, I would recommend to pay a lot of time on communication and informing your most important stakeholders on yeah, what's going on with the business, and yeah, what the scenarios are that you foresee, so that yeah, you can be a bit ahead of surprises. And yeah, people, your stakeholders can have an idea where the company is going. And what we also did is, as we were selling a lot of filters to microfinance institutes, we also got in touch with all our most important clients and asked them how they were affected, how we could help them, and how they foresaw their business in the future. Also, just to verify whether our scenarios made any sense, and that was also very helpful to get in touch with our most important clients.
Great. Yeah, I think we've heard from a lot of members the importance of scenario planning and open, transparent communication with funders. So good to hear that echoed. Okay, so I'm not getting any questions in the chat, but since we have a relatively small group, people, please feel free to unmute yourselves and ask questions to Lisa directly. You don't really need me to moderate, or alternatively to share any of your experiences based on some of what Lisa has shared earlier in the webinar. Radio silence. Well, in that case, Lisa, I can ask you another question that came through from the pre-registration form, which is, how has COVID affected your growth plans, and particularly with regards to scaling into new markets?
Yeah, that has been on hold.
Yeah, 100%.
No, I mean, we keep on. We're doing like back office work, working on registration, on legal stuff. We work on strategy. It's not that we are sleeping the whole day, but yeah, really getting into new markets. Yeah, that has been restricted because of the travel limitations. So what we can, we do now just from our from where we are, and but the plans are still there. I mean, that's the ambition hasn't gone. It's only that it's on hold, and it probably will happen later. And but our sales have dropped drastically as well. Like, we're now working on about 30 to 40% of our sales that we actually foresaw for this quarter.
Okay. Okay. Oh, there we go. We do have a question from Farid. Farid, feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question directly. Oh, here we go.
Well, I have asked a question, and you can feel free to respond to it. Hi, Lisa. How are you?
Hi, Farid. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Good to see you around, and it's been a while that we connected.
Yes, it's very good to see you here.
Likewise, likewise. So my question was, what were the motivator factors that you use for the microfinance teams once you hit the COVID side? Because at our end, what happened was the microfinance banks and their teams and such like institutions, their entire focus shifted onto their core business and less towards the allied businesses or such like partnerships. So if there are any insights or tips that you can share, that would be helpful.
That just has been on hold. So all our field staff that was supposed to give sales support and training to the branch offices of the microfinance institutes, we kept them in the office as they couldn't travel anymore. And we trained them in working in the call center and making calls to our existing customer base, as they were not possible to go into the field. And we see also now that the microfinance institutes, once they get back into operations, their first priority is to collect their outstanding debts in order to recover all the losses they had and the reduction in revenue. So it will take a much longer time when they will start getting back in selling energy effective household appliances.
Okay, so what in your mind would be the tentative timeline for them? I know deciding for Pakistan will be a bit tough, but at your side, I'm referring to your side, where things have been relatively different. So what are the timelines that you are seeing now, that 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, half year from now? So any tentative timeline that you might have drawn?
Yeah, so when we developed these scenarios, like our scenario 1, which was the most positive, was assuming that the MFIs would get back into the field and would be able to start distributing water filters again by the end of December. That was our most positive scenario. And then the other 2 scenarios actually depend on the availability of a vaccine, which would that will take much longer, of course, to become available in Indonesia. So I'm hoping that the MFIs can continue the partnership with us around December. But it remains to be seen. In Indonesia, there's no peak. We don't see the peak yet of the corona. There's only becoming more infected people. So it will have an effect on how people can interact with each other. And the other thing is, once the MFIs are able to operate again, probably there will be what they call the new normal. There will still be social distancing practices, meaning that at every meeting there will be only like 30% of our of people in the room that prior to corona. So that will also mean that for every sales meeting, the closing rate will be much lower, because there will be less people in the room because of the social distancing. So it will also be a big effect of the Corona crisis when working with the microfinance institutes.
Does anyone else on the call have experience working with MFIs or having a different experience working with MFIs? Actually, not that many GDC members work through MFI partnerships. And I mean, part of the reason is because MFIs just aren't as prolific in Africa as they are across Asia. So it would be good to hear from anyone on the call if they have a similar or different experience to share.
Hi, Emma. This is Gaurav. I'm speaking from India. So I would like to share some insights with respect to your question of working with MFIs. So, so I was earlier working with a company called Greenlight Planet. So we had this experience of creating different operating models with microfinance institutions in India and other countries in Asia Pacific region. So typically there are two models which emerged out from our experiences. One was more like a facilitation model, because a microfinance institution, as per central bank rules in any country, can only facilitate by giving a microfinance loan for these kind of products such as solar lanterns, home systems, water purifiers, bicycles, other white goods, etc. Whereas in the other model, there is it's more like a distribution model, so which is quite prominent in a country like Bangladesh, where the microfinance institution has a sister concern, which is a trading arm, and which can actually purchase products in bulk from a manufacturer and can do a bulk dealing. At the same time, the financing arm does the financing, again gives microfinance a top-up loan or a standalone loan. So these are two typical models. And the last mile distributors, at least till 2-3 years back, the products used to get delivered at the branches of the microfinance institution. Wherever it has got successful, got scaled up. In India, we were able to scale up with microfinance institutions who some of them have had more than 6 million, 7 million clients or beneficiaries. 2-3 years back, the success was largely a function of the products getting delivered at the branches. Whereas with COVID coming in and just before COVID, the expectation of the microfinance institutions has been that deliver the products at the customer doorstep. Now, for a manufacturer to do that in a cost-effective, sustainable way is very challenging. I mean, be it any country in the world. We talk about Latin America, Indonesia. Also, we tried with a lot of companies. But this is where the LMD, last mile distributor, plays an important role, where they're actually bridging this last mile, connectivity, thereby helping the manufacturer as well as the microfinance institution to deliver the products at the customer doorstep. So today, there are some successful models of multiple products getting delivered. So there are mobile phones, bicycles, white goods, solar lanterns, water purifiers, home cutlery, etc., where these LMDs are also acting as aggregators. So at the back end, they partner with multiple companies. As we all know, I mean, this is not new, but then some of these LMDs have been able to sustain because parallelly they also have their own proprietary entrepreneurial network, so like diversifying into multiple sales channels or revenue streams. Of course, it's a lengthy topic. Happy to share more inputs, but yeah, these are some initial thoughts.
No, that's great. Thanks, Gaurav. And I mean, obviously, Greenlight Planet, I think, has more expertise than the vast majority of organizations in the space in working effectively with MFIs. So great to learn from that experience. So Lisa, any other reflections on that, or anyone else in the room want to comment?
No, I mean, it's very interesting, very useful input that you provided, Gaurav. Very nice. But yeah, indeed, we are currently providing products to the branches of the MFIs, and then the branch is in charge of the distribution to the end user. And normally that happens when the client comes to the branch office to get their next loan or to make a payment. But it's yeah, it's a very good question to see whether it would be possible to deliver products at the customer's doorstep. Although, yeah, at this moment our organization is not ready for that yet. It would, yeah, require a new approach.
Okay, so I think we have time for one more question. Does anyone have a burning question they want to ask Lisa, or a topic that they want to raise?
Hello there, this is Robin from Hystra. I was just interested to know if this whole crisis and the pivoting and the new the dimension you've been building in your business model has also given you the opportunity to look at other referral or sales channels, and particularly through water or even power utilities. And I don't know, and of course their financing capacity and all the theory around how leveraging the power utilities that already build people today could be a driver of appliances such as water filters. I was just interested to know if, within the landscape of things that I'm sure you looked at as to rebound and build back better, anything had happened on that front. Thanks very much.
Yeah, that's a very good and relevant question. Thank you very much, Robin. Yeah, so when we did the referral sales, we've mostly been focusing on our existing customer base, so all the contact details that were already in our sales database. With regard to tapping into like new channels, for instance, such as the water utilities, I mean, it's on our list, but that takes such a long time. You're dependent so much on the political will of these water utilities to work with you. And it's also for Indonesia, for instance, the water utilities are called local drinking water entities, or local drinking water company, and it's really drinking water is already in their name. So when they would start selling water filters, they, that would imply that their water is not safe to drink. And everybody knows that. Even the Ministry of Health in Indonesia recommends to boil the water from the drinking water companies. But it's more political for them to actually then acknowledge that and put it in the open and say, well, sorry, we are called drinking water companies, but actually you still have to use a filter to make the water safe to drink. So that's the challenge that we're facing with these water utilities, and that would take a lot of, I don't think we can convince them through online meetings. We would have to invite them for dinner and have like very regular dinners and coffees and chats with them to, start enrolling this or starting a pilot with this, because it's kind of a sensitive issue for the Indonesian water utilities. But I know that, for instance, in Ethiopia, the water utilities actually are happy to provide water filters to their customers. So there it already takes place. So it depends really a bit from country to country how open-minded the water utilities are and how transparent they actually are in the water quality that they're providing to the end user at the end of the tap.
Very clear. Thanks very much, Lisa.
All right, so I just had one more question for you, Lisa, which was based on Scott's presentation. After your presentation, I know you said that your strategies around customer referrals had mixed success. So after listening to what Scott had to say, what do you think you would take and do differently?
What we would do differently is that every time we would make a sale, then it would be put into the calendar, and 2 weeks after we will make sure that we get in touch with the customer when they're still happy and when they're still happy with their filter and it has not become part of their general furniture. So that's one thing we would do differently, definitely, and also to communicate this from the beginning. Once we start engaging with potential customers, we would already start tapping into the potential of having referral sales from that and communicate that more intensively with our sales team. Yeah.
Great. I think we. All right.
Almost. I was a bit preemptive, but yes.
Okay. All right, I'll grab my screen share back up then. Thanks, Lisa. That was really good.
A lot more sort of freedom of movement. So that's just one idea. But I would certainly, I think a second one would, you know, in a post-COVID world is look at what are the other products or upgrades that that you know your two light solar system or your 4 light solar system now can have a television or perhaps something else. You know, you can begin that conversation with a client, and certainly for the you know for those that are still paying on the solar system, I think it's absolutely critical that those companies contact their client base, just to, you know, reassure the client and make sure that the client understands that the obligation to pay is still there. Or the company may even have some sort of a policy to allow some easing up of the payment, but still opening up lines of communication. This is a, you know, just think of COVID as communication. The big C of COVID means communicate. Communicate with your people, and whatever you decide as an organization is your strategy with communications about why you want to get back in touch with them, then absolutely do it and execute it flawlessly.
All right, thanks. Can I ask a follow-up question to that?
Sure, please go ahead.
Yeah, this is Alan Okell from Village Power, Uganda. We also are a last mile solar home system sales company. And yeah, I think the one sort of striking thing that sort of we realized as a company as soon as COVID hit was how limited our sales reps or sales team's skill set is for communication. And to really get them to a level where they can have these sort of conversations and not like choke up, but also not seem sort of awkward in such a short time has also been tough to do remotely. And so this is sort of highlighted sort of this gap in the training, but also the fact that there's so much turnover within the sales team that if you do get agents, for example, we've just onboarded some more agents, but it's remote and you can't really expect that level of engagement with the customer base from them. And they're just very used to sort of, I go out, I meet someone, I try pitch them, sell them, and it ends there pretty much. Yeah. So how do you handle that side of it, I guess?
Yeah, so you're really pointing to a training issue, and so first of all, let me say that you know, we have discovered, and because we're a service provider, we've discovered that we can actually train people 5,000 miles away over video. So it's like Lisa today on the call. You know, we've had to pivot as well to do that, and it's working really well actually. But one of the things that you're pointing to is oftentimes the selling methodology that's applied is more of a sales pitch. You know, here's my product, let me sell you on this product, right? And all of its features and benefits. And one of the hallmarks of the work that we do with every organization, whether it's solar or it's agriculture, whatever, is we teach very young, inexperienced salespeople how to have a consultative conversation with a client. And we have some tools to help them with that. But it's like, how do you ask a question and allow the client just to talk, and why that's important. So it does take training. You're absolutely right, Alan. They're not going to know what to do. Their confidence is going to be low, et cetera. So if you think of that race model, think of when you begin training your teams, think of the A, which is in this case confidence, because they're young and inexperienced. In the C, think of what are the skills they need to learn how to do in order to carry on that conversation. And the E, as in what are the activities you actually want them to actually go out and do, given the current environment. They may be limited in, you know, in the freedom of movement, but they may have some movement, and allow them to, you know, figure out how to get them to be able to move as much as they can move and interact directly with people, or even over the telephone, or even get really creative. Some people even selling over video. So that's my best for you, Alan, is, you know, you're exactly right. I mean, you know, COVID is just exposing this, right? It's stressing your system that you were able to, you know, succeed with before, but now it's really exposing that. But what I want to say to you is that even after COVID, if you can teach people how to sell consultatively, you'll have them sell a lot more solar systems, and they'll be better placed where people will actually follow through and pay the payments because they're really committed to owning your solar system.
Cool. Thanks.
Thank you, Alan. Do we have another question from the audience? I know some of the people here. Perhaps Philip or Wyatt, you would like to ask a question?
Don't be shy.
I'm picking out names now.
I have additional questions.
Sure. Oh, and by the way, Alan, if you want, you can go to our website and to wrpartnership.com. And in there is there's a place called the Media Room, and there are about 30 to 40 articles in there, not all on that subject, but there are a number of ones on the subject of how to sell in a consultative way. Okay. Anyway, Go ahead. What's your second question? Go ahead.
Second question was more about remote management. I know you touched on. I'd like you to sort of expound a bit more on that. Practically speaking, how do last mile distributors have to sort of change their management style? Because at least from our viewpoint, it's like I'm there with you in the field every day.
Yeah,
and I see what you're doing. So
exactly. Yeah, it's interesting because we actually are an organization. We have 50 people in our organization scattered all across the globe. So we do remote management. We were doing remote management before COVID. so we know a lot about this. And, really what you're wanting is to get some basic tools in place. Like, for example, goal setting for the week, or even, and then reminder for the day, what we call aiming. So what we like to do is on Monday morning, have a meeting with our team. You can do it individually, or you can do it collectively in a group. You might have to do telephone calls or, video if you can, and lead people through a goal setting exercise of, what is your goal for the week? What are how many sales calls are you going to make? How are you going to make those sales calls, et cetera? And so you really get them to get a plan for the week of what they're actually going to go do. And then you set up check-in times, especially with the newest and the least experienced and the lowest producing ones. Those need to be more frequent, like once every 2 to 4 hours. You might want to have just a check-in. How are you doing? What have you done so far? How can I help you? It's not a suspicion check-in. It's a support check-in. So I'm checking in. I'm going to check in with you today so that we can look at each of your sales calls, and then I can bring my expertise to help you learn as you go. This is going to be like training in the field each day, and I'm going to be here to help you day by day, or customer by customer, every 2 hours. And so we're going to check in, and what you want them to do is you want to give them a block of time where they can call you, so that they don't sort of, you don't have it solid to be on the phone at 1 o'clock, because that's going to interrupt their flow of work. But if you say, call me between 12 and 1 o'clock, then you can, set that time for that sales agent. Another sales agent you set, from 1 to 2, another sales agent 2 to 3, or you could do it in half hour increments. The other thing is you want to set it up so that your more experienced people, the ones who are just out there, you probably have a couple of guys who are doing just fine, given the environment, that they're trustworthy, they work hard, et cetera. You don't want to burden them with a telephone call every 2 hours. You want to check in with them at the beginning of the day and check in at the end of the day. How'd your day go? Tell me about, how many sales calls did you make? How many presentations did you make? How many sales did you have? How many close ones you have? What's the biggest thing I can help you with right now? Okay. And then what's your goal for tomorrow? You say, so, remote management is not as hard as most people think it is. And it's something that is, very frequent with most companies that we work with. They always have some sort of a piece of remote management. And I think post-COVID, this is going to make your sales managers much more mobile and effective. Because they can see that they can do multiple things from being in one location. Now, that never replaces field coaching. Never to say that you don't want to actually go in the field with your teams. I think you do want to go in the field with your teams. But if you can't do it, that's the next best thing.
All right, cool, understood. And sort of just one last little bit tied to that. So with scalability, have you worked with organizations that have really large sales forces? And sort of what is, I guess not a quick win, but what is the way to get around that? Because we find that some of our management, where they have pretty large teams, have been strained just being on the phone. Yeah. Almost like a call center. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So this points to another thing that's really important. Alan, I love talking to a practitioner. I mean, you know, I spent the first 23 years of my career doing exactly what you're doing, okay? Building a company like this. And is it scalable? Absolutely. I mean, you know, Family Heritage Life Insurance Company of America here in the United States is a $2 billion company. So we did a good job going from 0 to 2 billion. But yes, we've also worked with very large sales organizations, such as Mcopa, Off-Grid Electric, now Zola, et cetera. So, you know, we've worked with very, very large organizations of, you know, hundreds, if not thousands of salespeople. And one of the key things that you've just said is you have sales managers who have large teams. And that's a real problem, okay? We believe very strongly that if you're an inexperienced sales manager, that you probably can handle 3. If you're a medium sales manager, you probably can handle somewhere between 4 and 6. Wow. And if you're extremely good, no more than 8 or 9. Okay, so put past that lens over your organization, and that might tell you something. But that being said, I mean, the bottom line is that a lot of times companies have to have large spans of control, large teams, because their salespeople are so unproductive. And so to justify the salary we're paying that sales manager or that commission we're paying that sales manager, they have to have large teams. What I would say, I would work much harder. I mean, if I were, you know, consulting, you know, a client like you, I would be looking at what is the sales effectiveness of those salespeople, and I would be focusing on how to help how to have sales managers get those numbers to really move. And I mean, it's what I'm commenting on is probably self-evident. It's obvious, but that's where you're going to get the gain in productivity and, you know, be able to shrink the size of those teams.
Thank you. Awesome.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Scott. We have only a few minutes left. So does someone have another question to ask Scott?
Hello, this is Frederic from Senegal calling. I just put it in his chat box, a question about the referrals. You talked about referrals, that the agents should talk to the clients about referrals. I didn't get that completely. Maybe you can explain a little bit about that.
I'm sorry, about how to do that with a client? Yeah,
about like normally I was thinking that the clients give referrals. They call us and they say, my neighbor wants a kit, and then. But now you said the agents should ask for referrals.
Absolutely.
I'd like to know more about it. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. It really depends on, you know, what you're selling, but most of the time you can have an agent at the end of the sales conversation. The client has bought the product. You've got them all set up and everything. And then at that point you say, you know, let me ask you a question. Why did you buy this today? Why did you decide to get it? And then they'll say, well, you know, and they'll tell you. And then, you know, and then you say, I see. So you got it because this, and this. And then you say, well, you know, I'm going to be seeing everybody in the village here, but I wanted to ask you in particular, who are 3 to 4 people that you definitely want me to stop by and see, that I make sure I don't miss them? Because if they're not home, then I'll know to come back and see them. Who would those people be? Like, for example, do you have family here in the village? Okay, yeah. So who would I ask, you know, who would be a good person to go see there? Okay, it's like sister, mother, brother. And so then, you know, with that sort of intro, it gives them a rationale of why they want to share that good stuff with a neighbor, a friend, a family member, etc. And then you record the names of those people and you go see them, and then you say, you know, thanks, you know, I was just over talking to such and such. We got to stop because we're going to close in 1 second.
Great. I'm hoping that everyone is now back in plenary. So, I mean, we've cut it right to time because we wanted to make sure that we had a lot of time in the breakout rooms. Obviously, that kind of discussion is what we're all here for. So thank you so much to all the speakers and for you, the audience, for joining us today. We really hope that this was useful. As always, we will share slides and the recordings. I know there were a few technical glitches, so there might be some slightly shorter recordings, but we'll share them with you in the coming days. And as always, we're kind of continuing to explore different ways to support our members to overcome the current challenges of COVID, and also to look towards the future, including via our Innovation Challenge, our Resources Hub that I hope that many of you are already aware of and making use of, and in amplifying our members' fundraising campaigns, and of course working with all the other partners, including you on the call, to provide a range of different types of assistance. So if you've got ideas for what we could do more of or better, or if you'd like to work with us to support last mile distributors, please let us know and get in touch. But for now, thanks again for joining, and hopefully see you all soon.
Steps are, I think I talked about the kind of the COVID pivot, which is the latest one. I think to do that properly will take the next, I think there's a few components in that. Obviously there's a widening of the model, but also we are going to move to a model where we're working with other organizations and scaling kind of inorganically by partnering with other kind of local networks and using our technology platform to work with them. And so creating a kind of a hub and spoke model, which is, we feel that, you know, we will be strong in certain areas, and but we don't have to build now with our kind of, especially now in the last few months, we have kind of digitized a lot of our processes and our models. So we can apply that with partners, which are spoke partners. So we're looking at actually, solidifying that operationally, technologically, and then working with a few partners to test this model and scaling it up. That's kind of our next step. And that will help us obviously both within India and areas we're not in, but also outside India over time. And that's the intent and vision.
Okay, well, thank you for this. So that concretely means that you could, I mean, COVID in a way, with all the digitalization that has happened, gives you now opportunity to better work with partners.
Yes, absolutely. I think, again, I think it couldn't have been a, bigger, it's kind of a Six Sigma event for digitization, Lucy. I would call it that. I think in that sense, if you treat it like that, barring all the other negatives and, all the kind of depressing stories apart from that, I think it's important obviously to acknowledge that that's not, so you cannot say it's positive at all, but at the same time it has forced us to innovate, it has forced us to change much faster, and hopefully we'll come out stronger. That's for sure, we'll come out stronger, and that's kind of the way I see it, and you have to stay positive.
Okay, thank you. We have a question here coming from John from Aqua Clara, Kenya, to understand whether there have been any increase in demand for any of your products and services due to COVID.
Actually, interesting. I mean, so we had to change our basket, right? We moved a lot towards essential goods, right? And we worked on the contactless delivery processes, as many of you would have, I'm sure, and added kind of more sanitation, kind of health-related baskets to our mix. And that has been, obviously, there's been strong demand for that, as well as for essential goods. I mean, even food essentials. And that those categories have been scaling. From our existing basket, the strongest growth has happened on the menstrual hygiene side, funny enough. Because again, we do doorstep delivery, and that kind of means in this case that if people are not going out to buy sanitary napkins, I mean, this is obviously even more important. And some of these products are in that category around health. I mean, that's been the main growth. On the other categories, which are more energy and cooking and I think there's been limited impact, to be honest. I think they have been, I wouldn't say deprioritized, but again, to be honest with you, it's also a bit of a responsibility from our side. What we have just been catering, we didn't push anything. So it's been more about helping the community with the basket. And so it's been actually the other categories which have grown. We do expect these things to change again, hopefully, but yeah, that's where we are.
And maybe in terms of your services, maybe services to third parties as well that you provide as an organization, have you seen any increase as well?
So obviously massive spike on, of COVID related efforts around, I think there's a campaign in the public domain, which we put out in the public last week, which was around how we kind of digitized the 5 core messages for COVID prevention, and that has obviously grown. I mean, that's been our core offering. I mean, it's focused on things we were not doing before. So hygiene communication we were doing before. So we I mean, obviously added to that in terms of the other preventive measures for COVID, but also it's been things around. I think we're just experimenting with mental health, because again, there's been so many issues on the ground, right? I mean, you can't really. It's not something we're doing as an offering, but we're kind of partnering with organizations to provide those services at the last mile. That those experiments are going on, and we work with vulnerable communities around these services. So that's probably the areas which are migrant workers. Probably all of you would have seen the horror stories in India where people had to walk, miles and miles, right? And we've been interviewing these groups and trying to help them, and that's been kind of the other. I mean, helping them. This is not only kind of a humanitarian effort; it's also you have to have a business model behind it because they all have to find some work ultimately. Right? That's the struggle here.
So if there, again, don't hesitate if you have any specific question for Gaurav. Otherwise, I'm just continuing on the ones that we received previously. So you're one of the most probably scale-up network of last mile entrepreneurs. Do you see any specific conditions or characteristics of the areas where you work that explain that success? Or in other words, how much is this replicable for others in other rural areas of the developing world, and taking into account, I mean, the impact of COVID as well, if possible?
Finally. Okay. Yeah, so it's a great question. I think so. India is extremely diverse, right? So we went through our pains with this, right? So I think we started in a very developed state, Maharashtra, around south of Bombay, south of Pune. And that's fairly developed. And at the same time, within 6 months, we started a very difficult, more poorer state relatively, Bihar. So I think, so we did that at the beginning. So that stress tested the whole thing. I think we had to have different baskets for the 2 states. Ultimately the Bihar basket became more aspirational as well. But I mean, you had to have different financing packages, for example. So I would say our model is kind of dependent on a few factors. I think there's some level of population density we need for the model to work, and that kind of varies. And if it doesn't, I mean, we had discussions to do this in Africa, for example, and I visited few countries to do this, but population density is much, much lower than India. So, I mean, that basically means that you have to really widen the basket and offering to succeed at a unit level. Whereas in India, the density usually is higher. Within Indian states, it's also varying. So I think Maharashtra has a lower density than Bihar. So at the same time, has more buying power, I'm assuming, on a per capita basis. So I think these are the metrics you have to optimize, and basket depth and width actually both have to be adapted. Financing packages have to be adapted. So there's certain levers and tweaks we have to keep customizing. So I mean, yes, I would say we have a lot of learnings around this. I mean, are we perfect? Probably not. But and I think, yeah, I mean, that's kind of where we will at some point experiment in other countries. I mean, we have done it theoretically and with partners, but we would not do this alone. We'd look at partnerships to do this. And I mean, so I would say, yeah, the principles are customizable, as is so often the case, but there's lots of customization and local knowledge which you need, right? So.
Okay, thank you. We also have a question for Solar Kiosk. In terms of the purchasing power of your target customers, have you seen a big shift in that? And if so, how significant was it?
So there's definitely a shift, but again, there's a lot of support, or there's some support from government, right, around supporting that. But but that's actually why we have not really been pushing the higher value items, right? I mean, it's not only the fact that there's just limited demand at the moment, I would say, and we don't want to burden the customers either. Even if we give them on financing, which would kind of avoid that purchasing power discussion, it could lead to debts which are not really repayable. So that's why we've kind of I don't have data, to be honest with you. I mean, it's just data from our network, there's lots of data here, but again, can I generalize? It's so segment specific. So I suffice to say there's been a significant impact, and we have to be prudent around how we kind of that we do not strain our customers as well, right? So.
And did that shift also impact, because a lot of your salespeople are part-time salespeople, so do some of them have another activity on the side, and has that impacted how they saw their job with you, or is it usually the only thing they do, even if they do it part-time, and so it hasn't really impacted them so much?
You mean the fact that our activity has reduced?
Yeah, I mean more the fact, so purchasing power has reduced. So I was just wondering if for some of your salespeople or entrepreneur ladies, I don't know how you call them these days.
Dharma Life entrepreneurs.
Dharma Life entrepreneurs. So I was wondering if the actual purchasing power impact that has happened, including in rural areas, had an impact on how they saw their job with them as, you know, more important because there was suddenly an additional source of income when everything else stopped. Have you heard anything from them directly on how this has impacted their livelihood beyond Dharma Life?
Well, it definitely has. I mean, we have overlapped with entrepreneurs who have their own shops, for example, with about 20% of the network. And kind of most of them have another income stream, right? I mean, that has been impacted clearly. So we have had to buffer a bit through the kind of COVID response with our entrepreneurs. So we've been doing that. So yes, that data is there and is significant from an impact perspective. And yeah, I mean, it's obviously doing our best to help them with increasing our income levels.
Sure. Okay. Thank you for that. Another question from John from Aqua Clara, Kenya. How important has the collaboration with government been in your scaling journey?
So, I mean, let's say we have not really, we work with the government's consent. So when we operate in the village level, we always will work in alignment with the government's objectives and kind of, there's not really, I mean, we're not partnering with them formally, but we are working with their consent, with the village head's consent, for example. So there's lots of local kind of dynamics you have to manage, and usually it's very positive. I mean, people are supportive, but I mean, we are not dependent on that. We just want to make sure that there's no, kind of issues, and we want, or no, kind of opposing objectives. That's kind of the extent to which we work with the government. And obviously now we have been working with the government on various strategic programs as well. But I think there's a discussion at the unit level, at field level, and there's a discussion at the central level. There I think, I mean, you have to have local the local dynamics are different state by state, and you have to manage that well. But it's not really something where our model is based on any of the, I mean, we're supporting the government's objectives. That's more the case.
Okay, so it's mostly been working with them at the local level to get your activities set up, but then not being paid for a big program by them or something like that. Okay. Another question that had come before, and that's probably going to be our closing question, unless somebody from the audience has another one. What would be your kind of two pieces of advice to entrepreneurs at the GDC who have set up a network similar to yours with local salespeople? Like, what would be your two key advice to continue their journey and scale and deepen their impact?
Yeah, this may sound cliche, Lucy, but the point is really, it's completely, I think for us, it's been the agility and adaptability, which is essential. So perseverance, agility, and adaptability, right? To be honest, because it's such a dynamic market, and it's such a, I think we're working in a space where, I mean, like, let's say we had to change our basket all the time, right? So when we started working on solar lights, they were new and we were kind of market leading on the ground. Then everyone came in and we achieved our objective of penetration for solar lights, and we moved to the next category. So we had to keep iterating everything, right? And that's part of the game. If we are successful, then you have to do that, right? Because hopefully mostly that's the case, and you try to kind of you achieve the objectives. So that's the hybrid of the social and commercial objectives. So I think that's the key that you kind of don't get married to one approach. You have to keep improving and evolving. And then the second piece, it's been around technology. I think once we introduced technology into the system, it's not that we didn't want to do that from the beginning, but certain macro factors kind of got aligned, and we worked on digital literacy as a core cause. So it became kind of one of our core deliverables outside the other causes that made everything simpler, and we in-housed IT for that. And those are probably the biggest decisions I made, because initially we were trying to outsource everything, and everyone said, your best practice, you go to SAP, you go to all the bigger tech partners. They can do such a great job. Who are you to kind of be able to develop something like this? But the agility and kind of having technology built into your system as kind of something which keeps improving and evolving as a process has served us well, and I think we'll continue to do so. I think if you wouldn't have had that team in place, I don't really know how we would have pivoted in COVID. I mean, that's kind of, I would say, the 2 points, I would say.
Great. So John is happy to discuss more offline, I think, with you.
Sure, happy to.
And Thomas from Solar Kiosk, I think your model is also similarly centered around very core points and with local entrepreneurs. So I think there could be a lot of synergies to discuss. Just a kind of maybe closing remark on what you said, Gaurav. I think I think it's very interesting what you were saying. Well, we have 1 minute left.
1 minute.
So maybe just one thing, and then I'll give you the 30-second closing time. But just to say, I think that remark around evolving the basket of goods is really true for a model of local entrepreneurs like you. I don't know if we have any GDC members in the audience who have more of a kind of model where the agent travel and go to new places and try to penetrate whether 1 or 2 products more than a basket. I think these 2 models are quite different, but indeed in yours, that makes total sense. And you kind of need to iterate to keep your value proposition up. You have 26 seconds to conclude.
No, thank you, Lucy, for the opportunity. I mean, it was great and enjoyed interacting with you and everyone else. And yeah, look forward to staying in touch and on this in the GDC. And yeah, I'm happy to help in any way if anyone has any further questions.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. In 7 seconds, we're going to be sent back to the plenary for conclusion. So please stay with us. And 2, 1.
Great. I'm hoping that everyone is now back in plenary. So, I mean, we've cut it right to time because we wanted to make sure that we had a lot of time in the breakout rooms. Obviously, that kind of discussion is what we're all here for. So thank you so much to all the speakers and for you, the audience, for joining us today. We really hope that this was useful. As always, we will share slides and the recordings. I know there were a few technical glitches, so there might be some slightly shorter recordings, but we'll share them with you in the coming days. And as always, we're kind of continuing to explore different ways to support our members to overcome the current challenges of COVID and also to look towards the future, including via our Innovation Challenge, our Resources Hub that I hope that many of you are already aware of and making use of, and in amplifying our members' fundraising campaigns, and of course working with all the other partners, including you on the call, to provide a range of different types of assistance. So if you've got ideas for what we could do more of or better, or if you'd like to work with us to support last mile distributors, please let us know and get in touch. But for now, thanks again for joining, and hopefully see you all soon.
On being concerned with their health to consume more healthy products, and that's what we have as a company, as our strength. So we always talk about health products and how we can impact people's lives in terms of their immune systems, in terms of the quality of it. So it was truly a challenge to continue to sell the way we were before, which we did not sustain. But at the same time, we could share more information about the value, the intrinsic value of our product in terms of the quality and to our customers' health. So that was basically in that way that we were trying to continue.
Fantastic. And we know that there is a subscription model that Kiteiras follows, and there is a basket of products. Do you think that you needed to pivot some of those models in these times to acquire more customers or new customers, or retain the same customers with repeated purchase?
Mm-hmm. You mean if we are planning to scale up to other regions? Is that it?
Yeah, or the existing customers to repeat purchase for them, or have you seen a decline in the sales?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we started to notice a higher ticket from our door-to-door sellers, and that's because we had some risky groups from Kiteiras. So our main target people is from 30 to 50 years, or street vendors. So we had some difficulties with risky groups. So we had some people staying at home, due to the COVID situation. But for those who could continue to sell with all the, of course, all the safety procedures and orientations, but those who could continue to sell, they could use our argument, our communication being shared to show the consumer the importance, the even more important, as I said, it was to consume the product that they were selling. And we have one product, it's called Actimel. It's a little shot of yogurt, and it has the power to contribute to increase your immune system. So we started to notice that we had to focus on our current network and not to start to spread to go to other regions at this point, and to make these bonds more clear in the neighborhoods. So we have one Kiteira that continued to sell because she was not risky group. She was comfortable on continue with masks and hand sanitizers, and then she started to make the connection more quickly by some tools that we were sharing, some suggestions. So as I said, we had a lot of from 30 to 50 years old Kiteiras, and they were not used to use the WhatsApp and Facebook to share our catalog. They usually they tend to use the physical document, the catalog. And we started to share with them the possibility to send it from their WhatsApp and from Facebook to their friends, to their relatives, to their family, and they started to increase their sales because they could have more capillarity on the sales. They were usually selling door to door by knocking on consumer door and then showing our catalog. And we started to show that they could use the technology, the online tools in their favor. And then that helped to make even to equilibrate with for those who could not continue to sell because they were a risky group. They would have health problems or more than 60 years old. So for those who could continue by increasing their tickets, their average tickets, by selling online, by showing the catalog by WhatsApp, by Facebook, and other ways, we could reduce this gap that was generated.
Yeah, thank you, Matthews. That was fantastic.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, I echo that. Very nice. I don't know if anyone else on the call wants to chip in with specific questions. I can see we've got Erico Eze. I'm not sure who Jay Rivaux is, but feel free to jump in. Otherwise, we can take a look at some of the questions that came through, which are maybe a bit more general, less specific to the presentation. Okay, I'll take that silence as a no. So we've had quite a few questions that came in for you, Matthias, about working specifically with women entrepreneurs. And I suppose that this is, obviously completely relevant in times of normalcy, but equally applicable to the current situation with everyone experiencing kind of entrenched and particularly challenging times. So one of the questions that we received was around the criteria that you use to recruit women as entrepreneurs, and also thinking about the kind of socio-economic barriers that might factor into this. How do you think that women without kind of resources or a credit history can get particularly involved in entrepreneurship?
Okay. Well, our truly ambition is to be really inclusive. So a very straightforward answer would be we don't have no restrictions for one to start to be a Kitera. So there's no background check, there's no credit history check or anything like that. What we do is we hope actually them to choose Danone to start to sell Danone kits. But here's how it works in the detail. One who is interested in becoming a Kitera would connect to the distributor and accordingly to their location. And to start being a Kitera, he or she would have to make a minimum order to start to sell. But the thing here is that they don't need a seed money to start or initial capital. And why I'm saying that? Because we usually suggest that they start to sell for their friends, for their relatives. So the structure of our model is that once she order a product, she can have the payment ahead of time with their friends or family, and then when the distributor deliver their product, she can have the payment ahead of time to pay the distributor and have his or her profit. So the connection, the initial connection with the Kitera is just a matter of willing, I would say, in the term of he or she don't need anything to start being a Kitera. So it's really inclusive in a general terms. The other thing you asked is about women involved in entrepreneurship. Is that right? How can we see women involved in entrepreneurship in this actual situation? Is that the second part of that question?
Yeah, I think you kind of answered the question in terms of what might be the barriers that we might foresee in women in particular feeling in a situation or empowered to contribute and participate in entrepreneurship, which I think you've covered, but feel free to elaborate. Again, just want to flag that if anyone's got a specific question for Matthias or in relation to the presentation earlier, do jump in.
Yeah, I was asking because I was thinking while I was talking, and one important thing, really crucial, is that we have the work, we have the job to deconstruct the image of an entrepreneur. We have lots of women, lots of people from the community that they don't see them as an entrepreneur, because they usually think an entrepreneur as some guy with a suit and tie, walking and talking about business. And that's not what an entrepreneur is. So our work, our challenge, our main point is that by showing another examples from their communities, so people in the same situation as he or she is now could strive by starting the program and little by little constructing their stories, their new inspirational stories. So our real strength is from our network, from our godmother, as I said, who is one figure that is main objective is to develop the new beneficiaries, was to show them, to make them feel contemplated as an entrepreneur. So by seeing that someone in the same exact situation as she or he was in the past could have a different story, and to make it to be entrepreneur, to feel as an entrepreneur, as we commonly say, it's crucial for them to choose to start being a Kitera or not.
Great. Any further questions for Matthias from the audience?
can I have one follow-up question? Matthews, hi again. So I just was curious about the consumer segment from an income level point of view for Danone Kiteiras. Why? Again, what we have also seen in the past is during this situation, it is more difficult to penetrate the low-income markets. And I will also like to draw your experience that what have you faced in these times to penetrate the low-income markets, and what is the kind of a mix that Danone Kiteiras have in its consumer segment?
Well, so right now for penetrating in our markets where we almost already are, we've been working on a digital strategy. So we've been talking with social organizations from the communities, and we're started to connect to we call it micro influencers. So who are the people in the community that has the most power, I would say, to influence one? And it's not a famous person, it's not someone who's appears on TV, on YouTube, but it's that person that in their community is a reference. So a friend from the church who is really a partner of the neighborhood, a guy from a social organization inside the community. So it's really how we find people that are examples in their own community.
But that's one thing we would do differently, definitely, and also to communicate this from the beginning. Once we start engaging with potential customers, we would already start tapping into the potential of having referral sales from that and communicate that more intensively with our sales team. Yeah.
Great. I think